Rain drifted sideways across the gray courtyards of HMP Hillsborough, the most notorious prison on the outskirts of Belfast. The walls sweated with moss. Razor wire hummed under the constant wind. Inside, the smell of bleach and stale bread lingered. It was intake morning, and a group of new prisoners waited in silence, hands chained, eyes fixed on the cold floor tiles. Among them stood a tall, broad-shouldered black man in his early 30s. His name, at least the one written on the intake sheet, was Derek Cole. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Every step he took was measured, as if he had spent years training not just his body but the stillness inside it. To the guards, he was simply another American transferred to Northern Ireland on an extradition agreement. To the inmates watching from the second-floor railings, he was fresh blood. "Welcome to Hillsborough," muttered Officer Grady, a red-haired veteran who'd seen every kind of criminal come and go. "You follow the rules, you get out with all your teeth. You don't, well, you'll learn." He flicked his pen at the line of newcomers and waved them toward processing. From the upper tier, a cluster of inmates leaned over the railing, eyes sharp with curiosity. At the center of them was Connor Boyle, the so-called king of C-Block. Pale skin tattooed from neck to knuckle, jaw like broken concrete, eyes the color of river ice. He'd ruled that floor for 5 years by brute intimidation and the quiet blessing of guards who preferred order over justice. Connor's gaze fixed on Derek. He saw the broad chest beneath the gray jumpsuit, the clean-cut hair, the calmness that looked almost disrespectful. He smirked and nudged the man beside him. "New Yank thinks he's royalty," he said. "We'll see how long that lasts." Downstairs, Derek was handed his uniform and a thin blanket. His fingerprints were scanned. His name called again. Derek Cole. Sentence: 5 years. Transfer from federal holding. Grady frowned. "Says here you're ex-military." Derek's voice was low and even. "Used to be." "What branch? Does it matter?" Grady studied him for a second, then shrugged. "Not really. You're in C-Block. Keep your head down." When the doors slid open, the sound hit like a physical thing, shouts, clangs, the scrape of metal trays. Prison was its own ecosystem. Every look carried weight. Every silence had meaning. Derek walked through it like a man underwater, absorbing everything but revealing nothing. His cellmate, Tommy Keene, a wiry man with jittery eyes, watched him unpack his few belongings. A Bible, a photo of a little girl, and nothing else. "You picked a bad time to land here," Tommy muttered. "Boyle's been on a tear since the lockdown last week. Doesn't like strangers. Especially," he hesitated, "outsiders." Derek folded his blanket. "He runs this place?" "Thinks he does." Derek nodded once. "Everyone thinks something." By the second day, the whispers started. The new guy from the States. Quiet, disciplined, strong enough to carry the laundry cart alone. Boyle's crew watched him at meals, waiting for a mistake. But Derek never looked back, never joined any table, never flinched at the insults thrown his way. On the yard, while others smoked or played cards, he jogged slow laps, eyes fixed ahead. His rhythm was exact, almost meditative. Even the guards noticed. "Who runs laps in the rain?" one asked. "Someone trying to stay sane," another replied. Tommy tried to warn him again that evening. "Boyle's testing you. He'll send someone first, soft push, maybe spill your food. Don't react or he'll double it. React too much, and you'll have the whole gang on you." Derek only said, "I've dealt with worse crowds." Tommy laughed nervously. "Not in here, you haven't." When the lights went out, Derek lay on the lower bunk staring at the ceiling. Somewhere far away a door slammed, echoing through concrete. His mind wasn't in Belfast. It was in another cage years earlier, surrounded by cameras and cheers. He could still hear the announcer's voice. And still, undefeated world heavyweight champion, Derek, the Reaper Cole. Then the roar faded into the silence of a single night when everything ended. A charity bout gone wrong, a death in the ring, and the lawsuit that followed. The sport turned on him. Sponsors fled. The media called him a monster. The fight world's deadliest champion became an exile with blood on his hands. He exhaled slowly, letting that memory drift away like steam. Belfast wasn't punishment. It was penance. Morning came with the metallic clang of the cell doors. Derek moved through the breakfast line, tray steady, ignoring the muttered slurs and laughter from Boyle's corner. One of Boyle's men, a thick-necked bruiser called Reggie, accidentally bumped him, spilling porridge down Derek's sleeve. The room went still. Derek wiped it with a napkin, set his tray down, and kept eating. Boyle leaned back in his chair, grinning. Yank's polite. That'll change. For a few days the standoff stayed cold. Looks, murmurs, waiting. Until the afternoon Derek signed up for the prison gym. The guards assumed he'd hit the treadmill. Instead, he headed for the heavy bag in the corner, wrapped his hands in silence, and started striking. The first punch sounded like a gunshot. Every hit after echoed harder, faster, perfectly controlled. The room froze. Even the seasoned boxers stopped to watch. Derek didn't show off. He just worked. Precise, relentless, terrifyingly efficient. When he left, Boyle's lieutenant whispered, "Boss, that's no amateur." Boyle shrugged. "Doesn't matter. Everyone breaks in here." That night, a rumor reached the guards. The new inmate might have been a professional fighter. Grady didn't buy it. "If he's that good, what's he doing in Hillsborough?" Another officer shrugged. "Maybe running from something." In C Block, Boyle paced his cell, irritated. Power relied on fear, and fear relied on control. One calm man could ruin the balance. He decided to send a message, not to kill, just to remind everyone who ruled. As he planned, Derek sat in his bunk, reading the same line of his Bible over and over. "Blessed are the peacemakers." His hands, though still, carried the faint tremor of memory, of gloves, of the cage, of what peace had cost him. Rain slicked the yard again the next morning. Prisoners shuffled out for recreation. Guards watched from their towers. Derek stood near the edge, eyes on the sky. Boyle approached with 3 of his crew, pretending to smoke. The others spread out, a casual semicircle. "Morning, champ," Boyle said. "Heard you like to train. Maybe you can teach us a few moves." Derek didn't answer. "Come on," Boyle pressed. "We're friendly here. Give us a show." Reggie stepped forward and flicked ash at Derek's chest. The yard hushed. Derek's gaze lifted, calm as ever. "Not interested." Reggie laughed. "You got a mouth on you, Yankee." He shoved Derek once, harder the second time. For a moment it looked like Derek would walk away. Then Boyle pushed too. "You deaf?" I said. Derek's hand shot out, catching Boyle's wrist before the next shove landed. No punch followed, just a slight twist. Boyle gasped and dropped to one knee. Derek released him and stepped back, eyes unreadable. The guards shouted, rushing in. The yard erupted. Prisoners whispered, half terrified, half thrilled. As the guards dragged both men apart, one thing was certain. The balance of power in C Block had shifted. The incident in the yard spread through Hillsborough like wildfire. Prisoners whispered in showers, over the cafeteria tables, and through the bars of C Block. Derek Cole, the silent new arrival, had neutralized the most feared man on the floor without throwing a punch. In the prison library, Eamon Harkin, a veteran gang member known for intelligence gathering, scanned the latest inmate chatter. "Did you see him?" he asked a younger recruit. "That Yank? Didn't fight and boils on his knees. What is he?" "Maybe he's military," the kid said, eyes wide. "Military doesn't move like that," Eamon muttered, shaking his head. "That's professional." Meanwhile, in Derek's cell, Tommy Keene paced nervously. "You have to watch your back now. Boyle won't forget humiliation. He doesn't forgive weakness or those who expose it." Derek simply sat on his bunk, quietly inspecting the faint scarring on his hands. Each mark told a story of battles fought for fame, money, and survival. He didn't need to explain. Tommy didn't ask. Connor Boyle didn't sleep that night. Rage simmered beneath his skin. Every inch of C-block had been his domain, and this Yank had exposed a crack. He convened his lieutenants in the dimly lit corner of the cell block. "Tomorrow," Boyle hissed, "we remind everyone who's in charge." He slams a fist on the metal table. "3 of you neutralize him in the yard. Non-lethal. Make it humiliating. Make him submit. And make sure everyone sees it." The plan was simple, brutal, and calculated. Yet, unknown to Boyle, Derek had already anticipated the escalation. Every humiliation, every insult, every shove had been catalogued mentally, analyzed, and stored for strategic use. Tommy Keene, though a low-level player, had seen enough in his short time to respect Derek. He found him in the shower room later, alone. "Look, I've been here 3 years. That Boyle, he'll kill you if he can. You can't fight your way out. Not yet." Derek's eyes met his, calm as a stormless sea. "I don't intend to fight. Not for them. Not yet. But I will survive." Tommy studied him. "You've survived worse, haven't you?" Derek didn't answer immediately. He thought of the octagon, the bloodied ring, the lives changed because of his hands. "Survival," he said quietly, "isn't just avoiding death. It's choosing when to act and when not to." Morning brought a mist over Hillsborough, wet concrete glinting in pale light. Derek strode to the yard, his pace measured. Boyle's crew waited, grins plastered across their faces. "Rise and shine, boy," Boyle sneered. "Ready to eat dirt like a proper inmate?" Without warning, Reggie lunged forward, aiming to trip Derek. In a fluid motion, Derek shifted his weight, sidestepping and redirecting the momentum. Reggie fell face-first into the mud. A ripple of gasps ran through the yard. Boyle's fury erupted. "You think that was clever?" Derek remained calm, taking a deep breath. "Clever isn't my concern. Survival is." The crowd of inmates now watched, mesmerized. No one had seen such control in years. Not even the guards could hide their fascination. By the afternoon, the rumors had reached other parts of the prison. "He's the ghost," one inmate whispered in the showers. "The American legend who retired after a man died in the cage. You know, the guy nobody could beat." Some laughed nervously. Some shivered. Derek hadn't said a word. He let the rumors spread. His silence fueled the growing tension. Day 3 in the yard was orchestrated to humiliate Derek publicly. Boyle brought the largest gang members from the floor, intending a staged attack to prove dominance. The plan: force Derek to crawl on the wet concrete and beg for submission. Derek walked into the center of the yard, unarmed, expression neutral. Boyle smirked. "You don't know who you're messing with, do you?" The attack began. 3 massive bodies lunged, swinging fists and improvised clubs. Derek absorbed each strike with surgical precision. His body moved as if it had memorized physics itself. Each impact dissipated across angles of leverage. Each fall minimized damage. The crowd grew silent. Whispers turned to murmurs. He's untouchable. By the end of the melee, Derek remained standing, not a single bone out of place. Boyle, bloodied on the knuckles, stared in disbelief. That evening, Tommy approached Derek cautiously. I know who you are, he admitted, voice shaking. I've seen the videos, the cage fights, the knockouts, the deaths. Derek's jaw tightened. Then you know why I'm here. Not to fight, but to endure. To bring them down. From the inside. Tommy's eyes widened. From the inside? You mean undercover? Derek nodded. Every humiliation, every test, is all a part of a mission bigger than me, bigger than the ring. If I act too soon, everything fails. The concept was almost incomprehensible to a man who lived by intimidation. Yet, even Tommy understood. Derek's silence, his patience, his suffering all had purpose. Unbeknownst to Boyle, the prison was more than just a microcosm of violence. It was a hub for international crime. Contraband flowed through hidden channels, bribes lubricated the system, and the prison bullies gang coordinated with external networks for drugs and weapons. Derek had been placed here with one goal: dismantle the cartel from inside. His FBI handler, Agent Fiona McAllister, maintained contact through coded messages disguised as therapy sessions. "How's your adjustment?" she asked during one session. "I walk among ghosts," Derek replied. Every night he meditated, envisioning the steps to justice. Every insult endured was a rung on a ladder toward exposing a network that had killed thousands outside these walls. By week 2, Boyle had escalated. Derek was assigned cleaning duties, not just as punishment but as spectacle. The gang filmed and streamed parts of the abuse to sympathizers outside Belfast. Derek, however, complied silently, every movement controlled, every step calculated. The legend of the ghost grew quietly within the prison. Even guards noticed Derek's calm during extreme abuse, his posture, his breathing, his endurance. Boyle's unease grew into obsession. "Why doesn't he break?" he muttered to his lieutenants. "Maybe he's different," one replied, fear creeping into the voice. Boyle didn't recognize it yet, but the first seeds of panic had been planted. By the start of week 3, Hillsborough Prison hummed with anticipation. Derek Cole, the silent newcomer, had become a focal point of fear and fascination. Every gang member, every veteran inmate, every corrupt guard had noticed something unusual. The way he moved, the way he absorbed punishment, the calm precision with which he endured humiliations. Connor Boyle, increasingly obsessed, could no longer treat Derek as just another recruit. Every time he watched surveillance footage, Derek's movements struck him with a quiet terror. "It's like he's a machine," Boyle muttered to his lieutenants. "Every attack, every shove, he never falters. I don't trust him anymore." Boyle's paranoia escalated into action. He gathered the 3 most violent members of his gang, Ronan, Pierce, and Seamus, and briefed them on a plan to crush Derek publicly. "He thinks he's untouchable," Boyle said, voice low but deadly. "Tomorrow we remind him and everyone else who owns this prison, and you're going to make sure it's painful. I want him on his knees, begging. And if he resists, well, we'll teach him lessons he'll never forget." While Boyle plotted, Derek prepared quietly in his cell. He examined the bruises forming on his back and arms, each a record of past encounters, each a clue for what might come. Unlike most inmates, Derek didn't react emotionally, he analyzed. He traced the movements of his attackers in his mind, imagined angles, calculated force trajectories. His breath, steady and controlled, mirrored the discipline that had made him an undefeated MMA champion years ago. "Every humiliation is a tool," Derek whispered to himself. "Every insult, every shove, every forced crawl. It's a test. And tests have a purpose. Tommy Keene watched him silently. The young inmate had spent years navigating the violent hierarchy of Hillsborough, and even he could see that Derek was no ordinary fighter. "You really aren't like anyone I've ever met," Tommy said cautiously. Derek's eyes met his. "I've had to survive in ways most people can't imagine. And here, I'll use that experience to end something far bigger than this yard." The next day, the yard became an arena. Boyle had announced a spectacle to cement his dominance. Derek would be humiliated in front of every inmate. Phones were smuggled in, live streaming the event to a network of sympathizers outside Belfast. Derek entered the yard slowly, head held high. His eyes scanned the crowd of 350 prisoners, calculating and calm. Boyle, towering and menacing, stepped forward with a smug grin. "You ready, boy?" he shouted. "Time to remind everyone who's king." At Boyle's signal, Ronan, Pierce, and Seamus lunged. Fists, elbows, and improvised weapons came at Derek with lethal intent. But the ghost's precision was terrifying. Each strike met with a subtle pivot, a weight shift, or a perfectly timed step aside. The prisoners fell silent. No retaliation, no panic. Just fluid, controlled evasion. "He's untouchable," one inmate whispered. "No, it's him," another muttered, recognizing the moves from decades-old fight footage. Ronan swung a heavy pipe. Derek sidestepped and redirected Ronan's momentum, sending him crashing into Seamus. Pierce charged with a chain. Derek bent, rolling smoothly over the swing, the chain wrapping harmlessly around his wrist before he shifted, letting it fall. Within seconds, the three men were disoriented, bruised, and gasping on the concrete. Boyle froze, disbelief written across his face. How? By mid-afternoon, whispers had become shouts. The legend of the ghost was alive again. Phones had recorded every angle. Videos spread through encrypted inmate networks and leaked online, leaving Boyle's gang scrambling to contain the damage. Even corrupt guards were unnerved. Sergeant Finnegan, a longtime Hillsborough officer, muttered to a colleague, "I've seen a lot in my career, but this is something else. That man, he's a force of nature." Boyle, once untouchable, felt the first cracks in his armor. Every eye in the yard now measured him against Derek, not the other way around. That night, Derek's cellmate, Callum Byrne, a former Royal Marine, finally spoke up. He had watched Derek for weeks, and the realization was impossible to ignore. You're him, aren't you?" Derek's calm eyes met Callum's. "The world thinks I'm gone, but I never left. I've just been waiting for the right moment. And here, this is it." Callum's jaw dropped. "You survived all this without fighting back?" Derek nodded. "Every move, every insult, every attempt to break me. It's all part of a plan. Patience is my weapon." Meanwhile, Boyle couldn't sleep. Every surveillance video, every whispered conversation replayed in his mind. He began to question every detail of Derek's file. No prior criminal record substantial enough to explain the skills, no documented fights, no recognizable military service. "Something's not right," Boyle muttered. "This isn't just a street fighter. He's something else." He ordered his lieutenants to dig deeper, contacting external networks for any shred of information. The deeper they dug, the more they hit dead ends. Derek's history was sealed, federally protected. Boyle's frustration turned to obsession. He needed an advantage. He needed Derek broken, and he would stop at nothing. By the end of week 3, Derek had survived multiple staged attacks, orchestrated public humiliations, and intense psychological manipulation. Yet he remained intact, focused, and unshaken. His endurance became a legend among inmates, a whispered warning that some prisoners could not be intimidated. Boyle's ego and paranoia had set the stage for an inevitable confrontation, one that would expose Derek's true identity and skill to the entire prison population. Boyle had grown reckless. The failures of his past 3 weeks had emboldened Derek's supporters among the inmates. Rumors of the ghost's true identity spread like wildfire, whispered in every corner of Hillsborough Prison. Every gang member was on edge. Every corrupt guard avoided eye contact. Boyle called for a public demonstration of power, a fight that would finally humiliate Derek and assert his dominance once and for all. Phones were smuggled in, live streaming to white supremacist networks across Northern Ireland, England, and even the US. The yard was transformed into a coliseum. Inmates circled the makeshift arena. Cameras were set up at multiple angles. Boyle's lieutenants, Ronan, Pierce, and Seamus, were chosen to enforce the spectacle. "This ends today," Boyle announced to the crowd, voice booming. "You think you're untouchable? Time to prove who owns Hillsborough." Derek walked calmly into the yard, his head high, eyes scanning every angle. He moved with precision, a predator disguised in calm. The murmurs of recognition began immediately. Older inmates whispered to each other, comparing his stance and physique to old MMA footage from years ago. "No, it can't be him," one veteran muttered. "It is," another confirmed quietly. "The ghost." Boyle, oblivious to the whispers, focused entirely on his narrative. Boyle signaled Ronan and his lieutenants to attack. They charged with brutal intent. Chains, fists, pipes, but Derek moved like water. Every strike was anticipated, every force redirected, every angle exploited. The prisoners were silent, watching in awe. Derek didn't fight aggressively. He didn't need to. His defense was art. Ronan swung a pipe. Derek sidestepped and guided Ronan's momentum into Pierce. Seamus tried a low tackle. Derek twisted midair, leaving him flat on the concrete. Even Boyle's improvised attacks seemed futile, as Derek maintained perfect balance and breathing control. Phones in the crowd captured every angle. Live comments exploded. "He's untouchable. It's the ghost. I thought he was gone forever." Boyle's face grew red with rage and disbelief. The man he had humiliated for weeks now controlled the narrative completely. Derek's first true strike came unexpectedly. Ronan, frustrated, swung a heavy punch. Derek didn't counter aggressively. Instead, he executed a precise phantom strike. A liver shot timed perfectly as Ronan overextended. Ronan collapsed instantly, clutching his torso, gasping. The crowd fell silent. Phones recorded everything. The slow-motion footage revealed movements so precise, so surgical, that the true extent of Derek's skill became undeniable. Pierce lunged with a knife. Derek's body shifted, evading by mere inches. With one light pressure point tap to Pierce's wrist, the knife clattered harmlessly to the ground. Another tap to his temple, and Pierce froze, stunned. The entire yard watched in stunned silence. Boyle realized too late that the man he thought he had controlled was the deadliest fighter in history. Chaos erupted. Phones streamed live footage across multiple platforms. The hashtag #PrisonGhost began trending almost immediately. Boyle's authority crumbled in real time. Inmates who had feared him now whispered that Derek was invincible. Corrupt guards avoided any interference. The power dynamic of Hillsborough Prison shifted overnight. Boyle's paranoia transformed into desperation. He could no longer plan or control. The very man he had sought to humiliate had exposed his weakness and the fragility of his criminal empire. After the fight, Derek returned quietly to his cell. Callum Byrne, his cellmate, approached him. "They saw everything," Callum said, awestruck. "The yard, the fight. They know. You're him, aren't you?" Derek nodded slowly. "I never wanted this to be about me," he replied. "It's always been about the bigger mission. Breaking Boyle isn't the point. Exposing his network, dismantling his empire, that's the point." Callum understood immediately. Derek had endured weeks of humiliation, designed carefully to maintain his cover and gather intel. Every insult, every forced crawl, every staged attack was part of a larger plan. Meanwhile, Boyle was unhinged. His empire of violence and corruption was unraveling before his eyes. Every gang member who had witnessed Derek's skill began to doubt their loyalty. Boyle convened an emergency meeting with his external contacts, prison gangs, smuggling networks, and corrupt suppliers. "We need to end this now," he hissed. "That man, he's not human. He's some kind of ghost. Find a way to kill him. Anything less is failure." The networks responded with urgency, unaware that Derek had already gathered evidence of their operations through weeks of covert observation. Every smuggling route, every illegal transaction, every corrupt contact had been meticulously recorded. The stage was now set for the ultimate reveal. Derek's undercover mission was reaching its climax. Boyle had no idea the man he had spent weeks torturing had been a deep-cover operative, gathering damning evidence of his international criminal enterprise. Derek had endured the worst Hillsborough could throw at him, and the world had just begun to recognize the scale of his mission. Next, we move into Part 5. Dismantling the Empire, where Derek uses the viral footage, FBI coordination, and his unmatched skill to completely expose Boyle, his criminal network, and the systemic corruption within Hillsborough Prison. The video of Derek's fight spread across every social platform in hours. The hashtag #PrisonGhost trended worldwide. News outlets in Belfast, London, Dublin, and even New York picked up the footage. Sports analysts paused to dissect the moves. Martial arts forums exploded with speculation. The speed, precision, and timing were unparalleled. Boyle, still obsessed with control, watched in horror. He had anticipated humiliation, maybe some viral ridicule, but the ghost's return exposed him as weak, incompetent, and vulnerable. Derek didn't celebrate. He used the viral moment as leverage. Each angle, each slow-motion capture, each phone clip had been embedded with metadata showing timestamps, locations, and evidence of Boyle's coordination with corrupt guards and gangs. In Dublin, Special Agent Fiona Kelly had been monitoring Derek's mission. The live-streamed fight provided undeniable proof of Boyle's operational hierarchy inside Hillsborough Prison. Kelly's team mobilized quickly. "We've got him," she said to her colleagues. "Everything we need to bring Boyle down. Financial records, trafficking routes, witness coordination, everything is right here." Derek did what we couldn't do for 3 years. Agents in Belfast, Northern Ireland, and London coordinated raids simultaneously. Boyle's local distribution networks were exposed. Phone records, video footage, and Derek's own covert recordings created a web that connected every corrupt actor in his empire. Boyle ordered an extreme escalation. He tried to intimidate inmates into attacking Derek again. He bribed guards to turn a blind eye. He even attempted to sabotage Derek's cell, hoping to destroy evidence. But Derek was prepared. Every attempt failed. Derek had anticipated every move, every reaction, every contingency. His calm and strategic mind turned Boyle's desperation against him. Callum Byrne, witnessing Derek's composure, said, "You're not just a fighter, you're a tactician. This is chess, and Boyle is playing checkers." Derek nodded quietly. Every humiliation he endured had trained him not just physically, but mentally, for this precise moment. Using evidence collected from inside Hillsborough, Derek and Agent Kelly presented a case to international authorities. The revelations were staggering. Boyle had coordinated international narcotics distribution through prison gangs. Money laundering operations linked Belfast, London, and parts of Northern Ireland. Arms smuggling, human trafficking, and organized violence were coordinated directly from his prison cell. Corrupt guards and external contacts were arrested or placed under surveillance. The legal apparatus had enough evidence to prosecute Boyle and dismantle his empire entirely. The tribunal in Belfast became a media spectacle. Boyle arrived in court, acting injured and helpless, attempting to manipulate public sympathy. But Derek had the truth. "You wanted to humiliate me?" Derek said, voice calm and precise. "You wanted to break me in front of everyone. But your empire isn't just weak. It's built on lies, intimidation, and fear. And fear is no match for truth." Derek played the covert footage for the court. Every conversation, every directive, every bribe, and every attack Boyle orchestrated was documented. The judge, jury, and public could see the scale of Boyle's criminal network. Live streams from the yard fight, previously mocked, now became irrefutable proof of Boyle's attempt to maintain illegal control inside the prison. Within 48 hours of the court revelation, Boyle was arrested and remanded to a high-security supermax facility. All his gang associates were captured or neutralized. Corrupt guards were suspended, investigated, and prosecuted. International connections, arms, drugs, and trafficking networks were dismantled. Boyle's plan to eliminate Derek backfired spectacularly. The man he humiliated had not only survived but had used the humiliation to build the evidence necessary for a global takedown. The public was captivated. Derek, once a hidden figure, now became a symbol of resilience and justice. Former inmates, children in Belfast, and martial arts communities worldwide celebrated him. Media outlets labeled him the ghost who walked among us. Social platforms amplified the story, inspiring anti-bullying campaigns in prisons and schools. In Belfast, programs were implemented to detect hidden talent among prisoners, rehabilitation rather than humiliation. Derek didn't seek fame. He rebuilt communities. Former gang members were offered training and mentorship. At-risk youth learned discipline, martial arts, and conflict resolution. Prison systems implemented ghost protocols, using Derek's story as a blueprint for reform. Callum Byrne, once a skeptic, became his closest ally and co-trainer. Together, they created programs that turned former violence into empowerment. Boyle, now in supermax isolation, found himself trapped in the same system he had used to dominate others. His empire lay in ruins. The man he sought to destroy had outsmarted him, outlasted him, and used every ounce of abuse and humiliation as a weapon for justice. The ghost story inspired worldwide reform. 12 countries adopted prison reform protocols based on Derek's mission. Martial arts programs taught self-defense and discipline rather than aggression. International agencies used the exposed network to dismantle related criminal enterprises. Derek's legend was no longer just MMA skill. It became a blueprint for strategic endurance, ethical power, and transformative justice. Months after Boyle's arrest, Hillsborough Prison began a complete transformation. Derek returned not as a prisoner, but as a consultant and mentor. His mission had been accomplished. The criminal network dismantled, and systemic corruption exposed. He walked the corridors once filled with fear and brutality, now echoing with something entirely different. Hope. Former gang members, intimidated by the ghost just weeks before, now followed Derek's guidance voluntarily, learning discipline, strategy, and self-control. Power isn't proven by hurting others. Derek told a group of inmates during a morning session. It's proven by controlling yourself when you could act differently. The former prison bully, Boyle, remained in Supermax, his empire a memory, a cautionary tale. Derek had transformed humiliation into a tool for systemic reform, demonstrating that the strongest fighters are not those who strike hardest, but those who endure and choose purpose over rage. Derek worked with prison officials and FBI agents to develop ghost protocols, hidden talent identification, programs to recognize inmate skills, martial arts, leadership, technology, and channel them into rehabilitation. Nonviolent conflict resolution, teaching prisoners to manage disputes without physical aggression. Mentorship and rehabilitation, pairing at-risk inmates with skilled mentors to foster discipline, self-respect, and purpose. Community engagement, allowing prisoners to contribute positively to society through service programs, education, and skill building. Within a year, Hillsborough saw a 75% drop in violent incidents. Recidivism rates declined dramatically as inmates embraced personal responsibility and constructive outlets for their skills. Derek's philosophy spread rapidly across the UK and into Europe. Derek's fame, initially viral due to a single fight, became the foundation for positive change. Martial arts schools opened under his guidance, emphasizing discipline, respect, and the ethical use of power. In Belfast, at a converted community center, Derek taught at-risk youth, "Strength without purpose is wasted. Use what you have to protect, not to dominate." Children of all backgrounds, black and white, learned how to defend themselves, solve conflicts, and act with moral clarity. Derek's legendary ghost techniques were taught not to create killers, but to create strategic protectors. The ghost protocols expanded internationally. Programs were adopted in Dublin and London. Early pilot programs reduced gang influence in urban prisons. Germany and the Netherlands. Inmates participated in structured rehabilitation programs, incorporating martial arts and leadership development. United States. Several federal prisons implemented strategies modeled on Derek's approach, showing measurable declines in violence. The transformation inspired governments to adopt structured, evidence-based rehabilitation, rather than relying solely on punitive measures. Derek became a consultant to correctional systems worldwide, reshaping prison culture fundamentally. Beyond prisons, Derek reconnected with those affected by Boyle's empire. Families of victims, former gang members, and community members all benefited from initiatives funded by Derek's foundation. Scholarships for at-risk youth to study martial arts and leadership. Free self-defense programs for women and children in high-crime areas. Counseling and mentorship programs for recovering offenders. Even Tommy O'Connell, once Boyle's enforcer, became an advocate for prison reform and social reintegration. His story mirrored Derek's journey. Once driven by violence, now committed to teaching restraint and purpose. Derek's efforts culminated in the formation of the Ghost Foundation, headquartered in Belfast but with branches throughout Europe and North America. The organization's mission: transform violence into protection, chaos into discipline, and suffering into purpose. Annual reach: 100,000 beneficiaries across Europe. Education programs: 15,000 participants in martial arts and leadership courses. Community impact: reduced local gang recruitment by over 60% in pilot cities. Media documented the story of the Ghost extensively, showing that the man once humiliated and hunted had turned adversity into systemic reform. Derek's narrative was no longer about personal vengeance. It was a blueprint for global justice and rehabilitation. Derek, once an MMA champion hiding from the world, now embraced a role that transcended sport. Martial arts became a means of teaching strategy and ethics. His experiences in Hillsborough Prison fueled his work as an educator, mentor, and strategist. The ghost legend, viral once for combat, now symbolized endurance, justice, and transformative power. He remained humble, understanding that his mission's real success lay not in defeating a single enemy, but in rebuilding communities, saving lives, and dismantling cycles of violence. The story closes in a Belfast community center. Derek instructing a class of 30 young students, black and white, all focused intently. Behind them, a mural depicts a phoenix rising from flames, symbolizing redemption, resilience, and transformation. Real strength serves others, Derek says, guiding a young boy through a controlled self-defense move. The ghost walks among us whenever we choose purpose over power, protection over aggression, and justice over revenge. The camera pans to the smiling faces of students, the vibrant mural, and Derek's calm, disciplined presence. A narrative overlay appears. Sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one who chooses peace, not from weakness, but from unshakable strength.